want to thank you very much for joining us, Wrestling Marks. We have the one and only Del Wilkes with us on the line, better known to you, Marks, as the Patriot. Del, thank you for joining me. How you doing on this fine day?
Doing good. Thanks for having me. In the process of moving, so we've my wife and I, we've already moved, but now we're in the process of getting everything unloaded and getting everything out of boxes and getting everything squared away. So we've been going at it. It's very early this morning, so it's going well.
That's always a lot of fun, especially just doing the whole move thing. I know you had mentioned that it was quite a task, but you guys got it taken care of, and that's good to hear. The Wrestling Marks, just first and foremost, just want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for your contributions to the business. I mean, this is something that a lot of our listeners and readers and everything are going to enjoy. Kind of how we start with everybody, just to kind of keep it simple, is just just any memories of breaking in and this and that. Kind of tell us what made you want to become a wrestler and things like that.
Well, I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. I've been here all my life, and I went to my first live show in 1970. I take that back, 71. A family friend took me to the Township Auditorium here in Columbia, and of course I had watched wrestling every Saturday. Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling is what I grew up on around here. But that night that I went to the live event, I saw, at the time, it was my wrestling hero, Jack Briscoe. Jack and Jerry Briscoe worked main event against Rip Hawk and Sweet Hansen. And even though I was only 10 years old, I left that night bitten by the wrestling bug. And my love for it was even greater. It even fanned a greater fire in me. And I played football here locally, high school, went on to play football with the University of South Carolina. And I had determined in my heart that whenever football ended for me, whether it was immediately after college, whether I had an NFL career, and I had a very brief NFL career. I signed with Tampa Bay in 1985. They traded me to the Falcons in 86. The Falcons released me. So in 1987, I embarked on my wrestling career. The fabulous Moolah, who's probably the most famous lady wrestler of all time, is from Columbia. And she had a school here in Columbia. And so I paid my money and went through the school. It was more geared toward women. She had trained a lot of good lady wrestlers out of there, Wendy Richter, Leilani Kai, Judy Martin. But there had been some guys that had gone through there, but never any guys that had come out of there with any level of success. So there were a few guys hanging around that had gone up and worked for Vince and done enhancement matches for Vince back in the 80s. And those guys helped train me. And William would run shows here locally or throughout the state in front of very small crowds, high school gyms, VFWs, bars, any place we could put up a ring,
right?
And National Guard armories, and give us a chance to work in front of a crowd, no matter how small it was. But anyway, one night she had Wahoo McDaniel booked to work the show, and I met Wahoo. And Wahoo took me under his arm, and we hit it off very well. We had that football background in common, and he just took a liking to me and basically mentored me, and that was then how my career began to just sort of start taking off and going to the next levels.
That's amazing. Talk about just being kind of crafted with the hands of legends, so to speak. You know what I mean? Just having no choice but to be great. You said that there's a lot of women in the class. I mean, did anybody else in your specific class make it on at all, or?
No, there was never a guy that came out of Moolah's camp or Moolah's school that ever, besides myself, that ever really had a successful career. Now, like I said, she had quite a few girls over the years that came out of there and had good careers. But when I went through the camp, it was just me and a buddy of mine that graduated from the Citadel, which is a military college in Charleston, South Carolina. And we were very good friends, and both, wanted to pursue a career in professional wrestling. Now, it didn't work out for him, but fortunately it did for me. But no, there was never anybody else that came out of Moolah School as far as guys go that really ever had any type of career besides myself.
Well, being trained by Moolah and getting your start on the independents and random cards throughout there, how exactly, I guess the next step from that would be how you got into the AWA with Vern Gagne and everything. How did that all come about?
Well, that came about through Wahoo, because when Wahoo came down, Wahoo he lived in Charlotte. So he was living in an apartment in Minneapolis. He was working for Vern. He would still get in the ring on occasion, but he was basically in charge of talent evaluation, booking shows, things like that. And while he was in Charlotte for a couple of weeks, Moolah got into one of her shows. That's when I met him. And like you said, all I had done at that point was some independent stuff, or a lot of independent stuff. I had gone to Tennessee and worked there for a while for Jarrett and Waller, and things didn't work out there. So came back to Columbia and then ran into Wahoo. And after he got back to Minneapolis, he gave me a call and said, look, he said, I want to bring you guys up. The guy from the Citadel that was breaking into the business with me, he said, I want to bring you two guys up. And we lived there at Brad Ringman's house. I don't know if you know who Brad is, but Brad worked for Vern and had a good career in Japan. But we lived there at Brad's house, and Brad also had a ring in a building out behind his house, so we were able to get in the ring there and sort of hone our skills some. But that's how I started working for Vern, was actually through Wahoo.
Wow, that's amazing. There's a lot of that I wasn't really aware of through, trying to do research, with talking with you. I mean, as far as when you broke into the AWA, where was it in time as far as like business wise? Was it still pretty hot? Was it kind of in the middle, or was it kind of towards the end? I mean, where exactly you think?
It was when I got there, if it wasn't on life support, it was pretty close.
Right.
It had seen its better days. We didn't work a lot of shows. We had some talent that they would bring in, but it was guys that were sort of on the backside of their career. Wahoo, Colonel De Beers, Zabisco was still a name and had their strap at the time, and they'd bring in Nikita Koloff, Sergeant Slaughter, but they'd bring these guys in just for TV shows. And eventually, while I was there, DJ Peterson and I ended up tag team champs. And matter of fact, we were the last tag team champs in the AWA. It wasn't very long after that the company completely went out of business. But what helped me working for them, regardless of whether or not they were on life support, it wasn't the live show, it wasn't the live events. It was the fact that they were on ESPN every day from 4 to 5 o'clock.
Right,
I say every day, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. We were on nationwide, if not worldwide TV. So that helped more than anything. Just that TV exposure, did a great deal for me.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, the exposure and getting the experience to go up there and work with those guys, and that was more or less where I was going with that, was just kind of like, what the general mood was. Of course, I was going to ask you about, closing down the company as tag team champs and everything. And so, from there, it looks like you went on to Global. How did that all come about?
Well, I was contacted by, it was a lady out of Atlanta, her and her son. I had heard these rumblings that there was this big investor from Africa that was going to drop millions of dollars into a new wrestling company. And whether or not that was ever a possibility, I don't know, but it never happened. And there was a lady out of Atlanta, Georgia, her and her son had made some money in real estate, and they invested into this company, the GWF, the Global Wrestling Federation, and they ended up with the same TV spot that AWA had on ESPN Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 o'clock. So got a call one day from Joe Pedicino, who Joe was in charge of talent, along with Bill Eady, and asked me if I wanted to come out and be a part of their very first TV taping. And obviously, I was excited to do so, agreed to do so. So I went out. They filmed all their shows at the Sportatorium in Dallas. And I went out really, I had no clue what they were going to do with me, how they were going to use me. I'd worked for Vern in the AWA as the trooper. So I went out with my trooper stuff, my tights, my hat, my belt, everything that I had wore. And got to the hotel. And this was probably 4 hours before the very first taping that Global ever did. I got a call from Bill Eady. He was staying at the same hotel that I was and that all the talent was. He asked me if I'd walk across the parking lot and come to his room. He said, Bill Eady's in here and Bonnie Blackstone, and that was Joe's wife, and he said, we need to talk to you. So I went over to Joe's room, and he said, look, we've got an idea for a character. He said, just see if you're interested in it. He said, we really want to use you here. We really want to push you. We're going to make you our top baby face. And this was in either 1990 or 91, and I think maybe 91. And, this was when our military had gone into Kuwait to liberate Kuwait, where Iraq had invaded Kuwait. And so patriotism was really, really high. It was really, running rampant throughout the country. Everybody was waving flags, and patriotism was just really, really at a fever pitch at that time. And he said, we think this would be a great time to take advantage of the political climate in the country. And he said, we've got an idea for a character called the Patriot. And they already had a costume box there. They pulled out the tights. They pulled out the mask. It was a red, white, and blue vest. And he said, would you be willing to do it, to try it? And I said, absolutely. And that night when I walked through the curtain and walked down the aisle, these people had never seen the Patriot before. They had no idea who was wearing the mask, they'd never seen the character. And the building erupted. I mean, it was just unbelievable how just having never seen the character, or that particular character, the response. And I think it just solidified in everybody's mind that we were on to something good, or they were on to something good. It was their idea. They came up with it, but that we were on to a good thing. So just based on the response we got that very first night.
So off and running in Global as the Patriot. So yeah, I forgot to kind of touch on that. The trooper gimmick that you had in AWA, was that something that you had came up with, or something that they had given you, or how did that all kind of come about?
Well, it's sort of a funny story, and I don't know if the guy ever forgave me or understood, but nonetheless, that's the way it happened. One of the guys that Mula had there at her school that hung around and that helped actually train me with what little bit experience and knowledge he had was truly, he was actually a deputy sheriff here locally at a neighboring county. And that was his full-time job. He was a deputy sheriff, and on these little independent outlaw shows that he would work for Mueller and other local promoters, he worked as the super enforcer, and he was basically in his deputy sheriff outfit. And so when I was in Minneapolis working for Vern, he called me up. He said, look, would you do me a favor? I said, sure. He said, if I send you a tape, would you pass it on to Wahoo and just see if, they've got any interest maybe in using me? And I said, yeah, man, I'll be glad to do it. Well, I gave the tape to Wahoo once I got it, and a few days later, Wahoo came back to me, and he said, look, we have no interest in that guy. He said, but we like the gimmick. He said, we've come up with an idea of the trooper. And he said, you're going to sort of be dressed in a highway patrol looking outfit, and you'll have the hat, you'll have the belt, you'll have all the things that go with that. And he said, so we have no interest in him, but we do like the gimmick. We're just going to call it the trooper. And he thought that I had, purposely done that to him, but I didn't. It was their idea once again, and I just went along with it.
Right, that's how the wrestling business is, I guess. It's like, what are you going to do? You have the opportunity, and it's like you got to do what your boss asks you in a way, and you know what I mean. That's the whole thing there. That is a very interesting story that I think that everyone will enjoy. I mean, going back to Global, when you were there, I mean, it was pretty brief, right? I mean, the whole stint there.
Yeah, it was. I had an opportunity to go to Japan and work for All Japan for Mr. Baba's group back in probably, I don't know, things run together, maybe 89, early 90, but I'm thinking maybe 1989. And I went as the trooper. And I don't know if you're familiar with All Japan, what it used to be, the style of matches, the style of work they had. But it was something that I was not prepared for. And I didn't do very well on that particular tour. I actually was somewhat overwhelmed. I mean, they had these long matches with 20-minute finishes and, 20, 30 false finishes, and it was just something I'd never done before. So I didn't do very well. I got back, the global opportunity came up, went there, things went great. That gimmick took off, the Patriot, and everything went well. Well, I guess it was early 1992, I got a call back from Baba's office. They had seen tapes of me as the Patriot. Obviously, I had gotten better. I was more experienced. My work was better. They liked the character. They liked the gimmick. And so they asked me if I'd like to come back for another tour and another opportunity, which I thought originally I would never get from them. And so when I went in June of 92 to work that 3-week tour, they pulled me aside after I think it was 3 days and asked me if I wanted to work for them full time. And I did. And I told them that I would. So I never went back to Global. Now, they continued to run for a while after that, but, I never worked for them again. And back then, and I don't know if it's that way now, but back then, at that particular time, if you had an opportunity to work in Japan, and you could work in Japan, and you could get full-time work in Japan or consistent work in Japan, that was a feather in your cap, because I think with everybody inside the industry during that era, that if you could make it in Japan, like I said, if you could make it in New York, you could make it anywhere. If you could make it in Japan, you could make it anywhere. And so when they offered me the opportunity to work for All Japan full-time, then I was done with Global and never worked with them another day.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's I've talked to a few guys who have had a lot to say about their experiences in Japan and just how different it is and the respect and the crowds and everything. Did you experience a lot of that? The crowds being different as far as, being quieter and things during the matches and other stuff that you weren't used to?
Yeah, absolutely. There were times you felt like that you just couldn't get a response from them.
Right.
But then there were other times where it was phenomenal, but it was unusual. You could get responses off the simplest things. 2 guys lock up, headlock, takedown, headlock, and then all of a sudden a clean break. And then, the crowd responds to that. It's just funny. They sometimes wouldn't respond to no matter what you did. And then there were times they would respond to the simplest things, but they were smart fans. But when I worked for Baba, it was their business was at its zenith. They just sold out everywhere. You had Stan Hansen, Terry Gordy, Steve Williams, Doug Furness, Danny Crawford, Danny Spivey. That was the regular guys. And you brought in guys like Andre the Giant, the British Bulldog, and Rick Rude on occasion. And, of course, you had the Funks. And you just had an unbelievable boatload of talent there. But it was a different type of style of work than it was here. Everything there was done in the ring. Our TV show consisted of nothing but matches. There were no interviews. There were no managers. There were no valets. There was no countouts. Every match had a clean 1, 2, 3 finish. There were no DQs. There was no outside interference. Every single match, somebody got their hand raised, the other guy didn't, or one tag team got their hand raised and the other guy didn't. So you had to put butts in the seat based on the action in the ring, the believability of what you did in the ring. And so I felt like I worked, at that particular time working for that company, I worked for some of the greatest workers I think that have ever lived and ever laced up boots. So it was just a phenomenal thing to witness that, to be a part of it, and to play a part of it. Loved it. Loved every minute of it.
And that really says a lot about, you know, your experience and being able to do that and being able to have success over there. I have noted here that you even ended up winning tag team titles over there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we worked with some great tag teams and worked against some great tag teams. They ended up teaming me up when the first year that I worked there. I just basically worked in. And you do a lot of a lot of sort of oddball tag team matches over there. You may wrestle a guy one night in a singles match, and the next night is your tag team partner. There just was no pattern, no rhyme or reason for how they did things. It was different, but they eventually put a partner with me on a permanent basis, a guy named Jackie Fulton, and Jackie's brother Bobby was one half of the Fantastics, and so Jackie was a good worker. They put a similar outfit on him or a similar gimmick on him and called him the Eagle. And so we worked with some great tag teams, the American guys like Gordy and Williams. And then you had the Can-Am Express with Crawford and Furness. And then you had all the great tag team, the Japanese tag teams, and Kikuchi and Kobashi and Kawe and Kawada and Mizawa and all those guys you throw into the mix. But, yeah, they put the All-Asian belts on us, and you could see some phenomenal, probably some of the best matches that I've ever seen. Being in the business, being out of the business, were the tag matches that you saw in All Japan. It was just phenomenal. And it was amazing how once your match was done, if you weren't main event, you wanted to get to the shower quick where you could get behind the curtain and watch, you know, the remaining matches because you knew they were going to be that good. And it was just a card full of great matches from beginning to end.
Well, it sounds like, you know, obviously you impressed quite a few people with that run because then, you know, looks like old WCW came knocking, right? So how did that all come about?
Well, when I was in AWA, Eric Bischoff was our TV announcer. And he did our TV shows and called the matches. So I knew Eric. And, of course, I got to be good friends with Greg Gagne, Vern's son. And at this time, both guys were working for WCW. Back then, WCW did everything by committee. It was booking by committee. It was just a large number of guys, I don't know, 10, 12 guys maybe that were in charge of talent and booking and angles and things like that. Gagne being one of them. Of course, Bischoff was running the show, and Bischoff was in charge of everything. So Eric called me, and I went over to Atlanta and had a meeting with him and signed a 3-year deal with him, and was happy to be working back in the States and to be back home. I guess maybe the only negative drawback, or maybe two things about working in Japan and working for All Japan, due to the style of work, it was very physical. And so it seemed like, you know, injuries were more prevalent than the style of work here in the States. And then secondly, when I was over working in Japan, you'd be gone for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. And, you know, when you're a parent and you've got small kids and you're away from home for a month at a time, it seems like when you get back home, your kids have changed so much and they've done so many different things that you miss. So I wanted the opportunity to somewhat preserve my body and my health and get back to the States. And then also to be home a little more and to be closer to home because I could travel out of Columbia. Even though WCW was headquartered in Atlanta, you know, I did all my traveling out of Columbia, and we were never on the road for more than a week at a time, it seemed like. You'd have a couple of days off. So those were the main 2 reasons that I wanted to do it. And again, started out working in singles, and I don't know, after a couple of months, Gagne and Bischoff and Claire was part of the booking committee, and Kevin Sullivan, guys pulled me aside, and again, there was other people with an idea. And they had come up with the idea of a tag team called Stars and Stripes. And wanted to know if I'd be interested in working with Bagwell, Marcus Bagwell. And I had known Bagwell from the Global days. He worked as a Handsome Stranger. And when he when we started working in Global. I don't think he was but 19 or 20 years old, but I knew Marcus and knew of Marcus and had always gotten along with Marcus, so I was open to the idea. And again, things went well. We ended up twice winning the tag team straps there, once over Orndorff and Roma, and the other time over the Harlem Heat. And so we were successful there and had a good run there. I had signed a 3-year deal, but after about 2 years of it, I don't know, I had just grown weary of, it was a very cliquish company. If you weren't friends with the guys that were part of the booking committee, I don't know, it was just a very, very, very cliquish company. And so after about 2 years, I was looking for a way out and was ready to leave, and eventually did.
Of course, that's the whole thing. We've heard from several people that, of course, it was around the time when, when Hogan was first coming in too and everything, right? So I'm sure that kind of was getting everyone's attention, in a way, and ended up leaving WCW and going back to Japan, right?
I did. Back to your point, and listen, I got along with everybody that I worked with, but once Hogan came in, and then Savage and Beefcake and the Nasty Boys, then it was that WWF clique. It was that Hogan clique, and everybody that had worked with him in New York kissing his rear end. And then you had that WCW, you had that Flair clique, and then you had that Kevin Sullivan clique. And, I prided myself that I never fit into anybody's clique. I felt like if my work was good enough and if what I was doing was good enough, then I didn't have to fit into a clique, that would speak for itself, and I could stand on my own merit. But it did. It just grew boresome and tiresome after a while, and I went to Bischoff and asked him if he would let me out of the last year of my contract. And I told him what my intentions were. I said, I'm going back to, got an opportunity to go back to Japan. They've called me from over there, and I said, I'm not going to be your competition. I'm not going to work for Vince. I'm going halfway around the world. People that live in America don't even see the wrestling from Japan unless they get videotapes back then. This is before DVDs. And I said, so I'm in no way going to be, it's not going to be a conflict of interest. I'm not going to be competing against you. I said, just let me out of my last year and I'll move on. And he told me that he wouldn't do it. He wasn't going to do it. So we had a pay-per-view. I think it was in Tupelo, Mississippi. I'm not sure. But, and I just no-showed him. And I was on a plane back to Tokyo to work another tour for Mr. Bob and to go back to work full-time for Burma. So I went to him. I tried to get out the right way, the honorable way, the manly way, by going face-to-face and saying I'm tired of it and I want to move on. And he didn't want to work with me in that, so I just went anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there's quite a few of those out there, of course, Eric Bischoff, and he'll even admit to it, today about how, just kind of, kind of drunk with power and kind of just running around, as he would at that time. So, I mean, that you did the best thing for you and went back to Japan, it seems like, because it, I've got noted here, you did some great things teaming with, Johnny Ace, Kenta Kobashi. I mean, you can tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I went back, I guess a couple of years that I had been gone, they had used Jackie Fulton or the Eagle in a different capacity, and they weren't using him as much. And so, and plus too, it coming back, it put me in a different level in the company. I was now, working main events and semi-main events with, Hanson and Doc and Gordy and Kobashi and Ace. And so I was, in that upper echelon of guys there. And so I teamed with Ace for a while, teamed with Kobashi for a while, who, in my opinion, is, I think, without question, the hardest worker, the toughest guy, and the best worker that I've ever been around. And that's saying a lot because I thought even, there were a lot of guys over there that probably could have fit into that category as the best worker I've ever been around. Zawa could have been one of them. And even though they were different styles, Gordy could have been one of them. Again, a different style, but Hanson could have been one of them. But I think if I had to pick one guy to say, hey, man, that was the best I've ever worked with, it would have been Kibashi. And when I was there the first time, they had sort of built up a little, not really an angle, but we had worked several single matches against each other, and had some great matches. And then when we became partners, again, had great matches. This time we were, working together instead of against each other. But not only tough, talented, but also a very good mind, a very creative mind. And, over there that was so important because finishes were what sold tickets. I mean, those unbelievably long finishes with so many false finishes and so many kickouts, one right after the other. That was what sold tickets there. That was what made us earn money. And, so he was a very creative guy, too, a great mind for the business.
Just great wrestling overall, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. I mean, I remember, I saw a match with Kenta Kobashi and Jun Akiyama. It was one of my first, really, glimpses into, really experiencing Japanese wrestling. And here I am. I had been, watching it all my life, 20 years, and it just completely changed everything I ever thought about, you know what I mean? Anything that I knew as a fan, anyway.
Well, I would challenge any of your listeners or anybody that's going to, hear this or read this, that if you want to see some great, at least in my opinion, great wrestling, go to YouTube or whatever means you have, and look at all Japan from the late 80s through the 90s and I guess even in the 2000s. But, when you talk about Akiyama and Misawa and Kobashi and Kawada and Coway and just, even all the Americans, all of, the guys, again, Furnace and Crawford and Gordy and Williams and Hanson and Wilkes. And, it's just phenomenal matches in my opinion. It's stuff that even to this day, I literally, it just gives me goosebumps watching it because it's just, it's just so good.
Absolutely. Yeah, no stories or anything. You can just totally watch those guys and just be amazed at what they do, and that's what I love about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So just kind of shooting through here, of course, you get the big call to go to the WWE. Of course we're gonna ask about that. How did that all come about?
Well, I had worked for Vince on a few occasions since the early 90s. I had gone up several times, and early in my career, one time I know Rick Martel got hurt, another time somebody else got hurt, and they needed somebody to take a spot. So I worked, a month's worth of shows, a couple of weeks worth of shows. So I had contact and dealings with them basically throughout my whole career, but never to the point where we were able to get together and agree to a deal and agree to me working for them. But at this particular time, I had experienced some pretty devastating injuries. I had torn a tricep twice in Japan. I tore it, had it surgically repaired. The doctor told me I needed to take a year off because of my occupation. He said, if you sit behind a desk, he said you could go back to work probably within a few weeks, but you don't do that. So you're in a very physical industry, so you probably take a year off and let this thing heal properly so you can go back to doing what you do. Well, I took about 4 months off and went back, and it tore again, and I had blown my knee out. So I'd started having some injuries that were, letting me know that, man, I even though I love working over here, I love the style, I love working with the guys and these great workers, my body's just falling apart on me. And I need to get back to the States where things are a little easier on your body, where if you're working a house show, you can walk and talk and sometimes not touch anybody for 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
I've got to preserve myself. And Bruce Pritchett was working there, and I'd known Bruce for a long time. And he set up a meeting with Vince and myself, and of course Crawford and Furnace were working there at this time too, Can-Am Express. And so I flew up and had a meeting with Vince and JR, and I knew Jim Ross from way back as well. So I had several people there that I'd known for quite a while, and had a good meeting with Vince, and everything went well, and he wanted me to work for him, and I wanted to work for him, so signed a 3-year deal with him. And so that's when I went to work for what was then the WWF, now WWE.
Right. So what was that debut like? I mean, coming out on Raw, just like, you know, completely unexpected. You know, you came out as kind of backing as part of the team, right? Kind of tell us a little bit about that debut.
Yeah, they had some kind of angle going on with, of course, the Hart Foundation, and which was Brett and Owen and Bulldog and Pillman, and there may have been somebody else. And so that very first night, I think they had, at the beginning of the show, they had Austin and I think Sid and Shamrock, maybe myself, walk out as sort of opposition to them. And there may have been somebody else in our group, and I can't remember. But yeah, it was totally unexpected. Nobody knew it was coming, and immediately, because of the Hearts and the Canadian angle and the Patriot, the American angle, immediately started working with Brett pretty quickly in an angle there with pitting the American against the evil Canadian, and so really just started out basically right away. Not long after I got there, working an angle with Brett.
Yeah, and that's the great thing that I remember about that whole thing too. I was like, wow, here's a guy, he's coming in and just like at just the hot moment, with that angle that's going on, just get shot right into the program with Brett. Of course, had the big pay-per-view match with him on the card, the Ground Zero card. What are your memories of that in particular?
Well, I enjoyed working with Brett. In a lot of ways, Brett sort of had that Japanese mentality about him, and that's what I liked as well. I was of the same mindset. Very little nonsense in the matches, no comedic points, just get in the ring, work hard, and let's put on a good show. Let's have a good match, let's put in some time. And so I enjoyed working with Brett, true professional. And, of course, as a result of that, got to work with Owen and Pillman. And, of course, I've known Pillman for a long time. Matter of fact, Pillman and I played against each other in college. My junior year at South Carolina, Pillman was a starting nose guard for Miami of Ohio, and they came to Columbia and played against Pillman. And so actually had a good relationship with Brian for a number of years. But, again, working with great workers and good workers, but a completely different style than what I had been used to. Now, Brett was more, in line and probably had a lot of that mindset that I had just come from in Japan than the other guys did. But, and again, got to do some things with Vader, worked with Shamrock a few times in some tag matches. So got to work with a lot of different guys in a lot of different situations, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed working there. But again, the injury issue was rearing its ugly head and just causing me a lot of problems. And I felt like preventing me from doing things in the ring that I wanted to do, that I used to could do. It was preventing me from doing things in the gym that I felt like I needed to do, which that in turn affects your physique and your look. And so I was just struggling with some injuries. Of course, it would eventually cost me my career and end my career. And so while I enjoyed the time working with those guys and being on the road with those guys, it was also, I don't know, it was funny. There was a good side of it, but there was also a bad side of it too. That when you're trying to work through those type of injuries, and I'm not talking about a sore neck. I'm talking about muscles that have literally tendons and muscles that have literally ripped off the bone, and a knee that needed, had 2 replacements on it since then. So a knee that was in pretty bad shape. So when you're trying to work through those type of eventually devastating injuries, it affects everything you do, and it also affects your you start getting to the point where you're just like, wow, man, I mean, is this worth it? I mean, you're in pain every night, you're hurting every night, you're limited in what you can do. You're starting to just, I don't know, you're just starting to question how much longer can I continue to do this? And, of course, those injuries eventually did, not very long down the road, cost me my career.
Yeah, and that's it's very unfortunate, especially you look back on the whole thing. I was really enjoying your run. I know a lot of the other marks, a lot of the other fans were as well, and it just seemed like, wow, just like all of a sudden no more Patriot, and it's just to think, I mean, that's like really right before WWE started booming again, and I just think, to have a guy with your work rate, and everything in there, and your personality, I mean, what might have happened, and and unfortunately cut very, very short. But you don't seem to have too many regrets, of course. I mean, you don't seem to be one of those guys that's like really out there, doing like every kind of signing he can get, and, sort of a thing. You kind of, prolonged your enjoyment of life past wrestling, I mean, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, for whatever reason, I've always been able to do that, and to me, life it's like a book. There are chapters, and when those chapters end, you move on to the next chapter. And I saw it in football, I saw it in wrestling, and I promised myself, and that's just not my personality anyway, to be one of those guys that just could not let it go and just try to hang on and hang on and hang on. And I remember when I was just in the infancy of my career, when I'm working in front of 200 people in Connersville, North Carolina, and there's guys, and I'm not going to mention names, but there are guys that I had respect for that I watched when I was literally a kid. These guys were iconic figures in the wrestling business, in the wrestling industry. And here they are, for whatever reason, they're back where they started, working in front of 200 people in a small town in North Carolina. And I just thought to myself, man, I don't want to do that. Whenever it's over for me, I want to move on. I don't want to, drive all over the country working for $300 a night and working where you can smell the popcorn and you can hear the front door open and you got 50, 75, 100 people there. I don't want to do that, and I'm not going to do that. And I thank the Lord that I haven't. I mean, when it was over, it was over. You move on. You just go to the next chapter in your life. I'm very proud of what I did. I think it's a great business. It's a great industry. I had a good career. Would I have liked for it to be longer? Absolutely. But I had no control over that. And, things happen for a reason. The Lord has a plan for all of us. And when it was over, as a matter of fact, the day I decided I could no longer go, I was on a conference call. My doctor, my orthopedic surgeon, Vince and Jim Ross, and we were all on the phone together. And Vince said, Bill, he said, we've been talking to your doctor, and he said, he just tells us that your body's beat up, man. You're just, through football and wrestling and the years you spent in Japan, that you just worn your body out, and he just doesn't think that you can physically continue to do what you need to do. He said, how do you feel about it? And I said, Vince, I agree 100%. I said, I just got to the point where I almost dread packing my suitcase and just having to fight through these injuries and work through them. And he said, I tell you what we'll do. He said, get healed, have whatever surgeries you need, get your body healthy, and then if you want to come back and work, you got a job, and if you want to work on a limited schedule, you can do that. And he said, the door's open here for you. We'll work with you anyway we have to, or we need to or have to. And one of the surgeries that I had to have was the surgery to reattach my tricep tendon to the elbow. And after about a month after surgery, I started having major problems. My arms swelled up real bad, my fingers, my hand, it was just burning continuously. So I went back to the doctor, and found out that I had a real bad staph infection that had set up in that surgical wound. So I had to have another surgery. And this surgery, I've got about a 7-inch scar on the back of my right tricep. They did not put a single stitch in this surgical wound. It was an open surgical wound, and the reason was they wanted it to drain where all the infection could get out, and they wanted it just to close and heal on its own. And I asked the doctor after surgery, I said, how long will it take this thing to close? He said, maybe 9 months. Well, it took over 2 years. So I was in no condition to go back if I'd have wanted to go back. And I had an open surgical wound on the back of my arm that took almost a little over 2 years to completely close.
Wow.
So, it was just, it just wasn't meant to be. And, but again, I have no regrets. I've got great memories, worked with great people, met great people, traveled the world, worked in front of 10, 15, 20,000 people and live shows and millions on TV. Man, how could you have any regrets about that?
Oh, no, absolutely not. A great career. Definitely, a lot of things that I've learned from this as well. I mean, of course, as far as like career-wise, that's pretty much it. I wanted to kind of throw a few things out to you, as well, beyond that.
Sure.
Do you watch the product today at all, or just...
Occasionally.
Yeah.
I would rather go back and watch old tapes or DVDs and YouTube, from my time and even before. But yeah, I do. One of the reasons I don't watch an awful lot of it is there's nobody left working when I was working. Triple H works occasionally, I guess, and I guess Taker works once a year. And, to my knowledge, those are really the only two guys left from my era and my generation. But, like this past Monday night, I watched it for about 45 minutes, and it's changed. And it doesn't matter whether I like it or not, it's changed. And, it's just a lot more, I don't know the exact word to use, but it's just goofy. It's hokey.
Right.
And, it used to be, and again, I realize things have changed and the way people are entertained has changed, but it used to be you wanted to protect the integrity of the business, and while people may have wondered and doubted, is it real, is it not, is it predetermined, but now, they make it so obvious, and it is. It's just like watching a bad reality show a lot of times, and I watched that, what is it, the other one, not WWE, but TNA?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I turned over to it about a month ago, whatever night they come on. And I said, well, let me watch a little bit of this product. And I've watched some of their product from time to time. Well, the first thing I get is there's two guys out in the woods, one with a big walking stick, the other one dressed up like a bunny rabbit or a kangaroo or something. And I thought, what in the name of blue blazes has this got to do with wrestling? Yeah. And, it was like they were on a treasure hunt out in the woods. And I thought, wow, boy, I long for the days of All Japan where you just could watch guys get in the ring and have a good match. But it's just not that way anymore.
Right, exactly. Just clogged with stories. I was talking with a wrestler one time, and he told me how he had timed a TNA wrestling episode and how it was a good, 46 or something minutes, maybe not that long into the program before he actually saw a wrestling hold applied. So, that just goes to show you sometimes.
Yeah.
Another little thing I wanted to ask you about here, Tom Brandi stealing your gimmick. Can you talk about this at all? Is there anything that ever happened with that?
No, gladly.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It really is, and it's sort of maybe sad and pathetic on Tom's part. But I saw on the internet a while back, I don't know, and I don't even own a computer. The only time I get on a computer is when I go to work, and I may look at some stuff on it. So I'm not a very tech-savvy guy. I don't get into Facebook, and my wife does that, but I don't. And any of that. Anyway, one day, somebody, I don't know if they called me or I run into somebody somewhere and said they saw on the internet where I had sold that to Tom Brandi. Well, that's a lie. I didn't. I've never even talked to Tom Brandi about it. The only time I've been around Tom Brandi in my life was he came over and worked one tour for us in Japan. I think it was one. It may have been two. But it was a very short-lived career over there. He didn't fit in with any of the guys. And the guys getting along, you know, you're on the same bus for hours at a time. You're in the same locker room, the same hotel room, the same gym, the same restaurants. So a cohesive group is very important. And Tom just didn't fit in. You know, I hate to say it, nobody liked him, and they made it very known to bother him. So after one or two tours, he never came back. That was the only time I've ever been around the guy. And then I realized that he's running around, you know, calling himself the Patriot. And this is, you know, it's a free country. If you want to do that, so be it. I mean, I'm not gonna fight you over, beat you up over it, or take you to court over it, or anything like that. But if you were so good, if Tom Brandi was so good, why do you have to be somebody else and pretend to be somebody else? And another thing that got me is I know for a fact that he has sold pictures of me as himself.
Wow.
You know, it's one thing to put the gimmick on and call yourself the Patriot and have somebody take some pictures or go have pictures made and sell them. But when you're taking pictures of Del Wilkes and you're selling them at shows and you know, it's just crazy. But if that's the only way he can still hang on and have somewhat of a little twinkle of a career in this business, then, you know, that's on him, man. But no, I never sold him anything, never even talked to him about it, never gave it or anything like that. Just ridiculous.
Telling you, Del Wilkes, you know, I mean, it's a class act all the way right there. You know what I mean? Just, you know, why even get into the ugliness of it? You know what I mean? Of course, you're better than kind of giving him the time of day as far as that goes. You know what I mean? And that's the whole thing. I mean, you know, Tom Brandi, who, you know what I mean? It's like I don't know how much stuff he's done out there, but I mean, other than that, I mean, just to kind of wrap it up with you, I know we've kind of ran a little long here. Just, do you have a quick road story or two you want to throw out there real quick? Some kind of funny little something you want to share with us?
Well, there's a lot of them, but most of them are probably R-rated, X-rated, and that's probably not something that I want to share. But I don't know. There's so many. There are just so many stories. You know, so many memories of being on the road and being with the guys, and just you know, guys pranking each other and things like that. And you know, I wouldn't know where to start. I don't know that I've got a particular one, but just a lot of great memories from being on the road with the guys. And I, you know, been on planes where I've seen guys get halcyons dropped in their drinks, and they wake up without eyebrows, and they wake up bald-headed. And so, you know, I've seen that happen quite a few times, and even worse. And but, you know, stories that you know, I'm not going to relate or not going to throw anybody's name out there. Like they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and what happens on the road, I guess, should stay on the road and stay between the participants and those that watched it and saw it.
All right, fair enough. Well, other than that, I think that's about all I have. Del, once again, I mean, just thank you so much for spending this time with me. It's been absolutely amazing. True Southern gentleman right here, Del Wilkes, the real Patriot. I just want to thank you again for joining me, and we'll maybe talk to you sometime down the line. Maybe have you on a panel or something, maybe in the future. All right.
Sounds good. Appreciate you having me. Have a good afternoon.
Hey, thank you. You too. All right. Bye-bye.